The council chamber stretched across 300 meters of polished crystal floor, ceiling open to the stars themselves. Representatives from 47 species filled the tiered seats, their voices echoing in a dozen different languages as the translation matrix worked to make sense of the chaos. Ambassador Ji-hoon Kim sat quietly in Earth's designated seat, his hands folded on the desk before him, his expression calm and unreadable. He had been sitting like this for 3 years now, watching, listening, taking notes on his datapad while the galaxy argued about borders, trade routes, and mineral rights. The other ambassadors barely noticed him anymore. Earth was the quiet species. The newcomers, who had nothing to contribute and even less to say, Counselor Thexmore stood at the central podium, his forearms gesturing dramatically as he spoke about the Veltharia Empire's right to expand into the Kepler sector. His voice carried the weight of a civilization that had ruled space for 10,000 years. When he finished, the Harathi delegate immediately challenged him, and the argument began again. Ji-hoon made another note on his datapad. He had 47 separate files now, one for each species. He knew how they argued, how they negotiated, how they threatened. He knew their strengths and their weaknesses. But he kept all of this to himself, because that was the plan. Earth would remain silent until silence was no longer useful. Captain Minji Park stood on the bridge of the Silent Observer, watching the scanner displays with practiced focus. Her ship was small by galactic standards, only 80 meters long, but it was invisible to every sensor system the Council species used. Human engineers had spent 20 years perfecting stealth technology, and the Observer was their masterpiece. "Captain, we're picking up movement in Sector 14, her tactical officer reported. 17 contacts, biosignatures, match Drethek patterns." Minji leaned forward. The Drethok swarm had been a problem in the Outer Rim for decades, but the Council treated them like a minor nuisance. They would consume a colony here, absorb a mining station there, and the Council would issue strongly worded statements before forgetting about them. "Track them," Minji ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to know where they're going and what they're doing." The Drethok vessels moved through space like living things because they were living things. Great bioships grown from captured genetic material, their hulls pulsing with organic processes that human scientists still didn't fully understand. They were heading toward the inner systems, toward more populated space. Minji recorded everything and sent the encrypted data back to Earth through quantum channels the Council didn't know existed. Admiral Choi would want to see this. Back in the Council chamber, the debate had shifted to the Drethak question. The Harathi delegate was demanding action, claiming that the swarm had destroyed 3 of their listening posts in the past month. The other species murmured their concern, but offered nothing concrete. "We should form a committee," suggested the Plenarian ambassador, its tentacles waving thoughtfully. "A thorough investigation of Drethok behavior patterns and territorial claims." Several species agreed. Committees were safe. Committees meant they could talk about problems without actually doing anything about them. Bexmore glanced at the human ambassador. "And what does Earth think about this crisis?" "Ambassador Kim, you've been unusually quiet, even for you." A few species laughed at that. The joke was easy. Humans were always quiet. Ji-hoon stood slowly, his movement drawing attention despite his small stature compared to most council members. "Earth is observing the situation," he said, his voice steady and neutral. "We will report our findings when we have conclusions to share." "Observing," Dexmore repeated with barely concealed contempt. "Your species has been observing for 23 years. When will you actually participate in galactic affairs?" "When participation is necessary," Ji-hoon replied, and sat back down. The Council moved on. The Drethek issue was tabled for future discussion. No military action would be taken. No defense fleet would be mobilized. The galaxy would continue as it always had, with talk and committees and endless debate. Ji-hoon made another note on his datapad. 3 days later, the message came through on priority channels. The research station Kepler, 442, home to 847 human colonists, had gone dark. Captain Park's ship reached the location first, and what she found made her stomach turn. The station was gone. Not destroyed by weapons fire, but consumed. The Drethuk had torn it apart and absorbed everything, leaving only a few twisted pieces of metal drifting in space. There were no survivors. There were no bodies. The Drethuk didn't leave bodies. Minji sent the report to Earth and waited for orders. The emergency council session was called within hours. Ji-hoon stood at Earth's podium and presented the evidence. Holographic displays showed the consumed station, the colony's final transmissions, the screams that had filled the comm channels before silence took over. The council chamber fell quiet as the images played. Then came the responses. Tragic, the Plenarian ambassador said. Our deepest sympathies, offered the Harathi delegate. These things happen in frontier space, Bexmore added. Perhaps humanity should reconsider establishing stations so far from protected space. Ji-hoon waited for someone to suggest action. Military response. Defense commitments. Something beyond words. Nothing came. Earth appreciates the Council's concern, Ji-hoon said finally. His voice still calm, despite the rage building behind his eyes. We request a 72-hour recess to consult with our government. The Council agreed. It was a reasonable request. Ji-hoon returned to his quarters and sent a single, encrypted message to Earth. 2 words. Execute Phoenix. In an hour. Every human embassy, consulate, and outpost in Council space closed their communication channels. Every human ship in known space activated stealth systems and vanished from sensors. Every human diplomat stopped responding to messages. Earth went silent, complete. Absolute, terrifying silence. The galaxy noticed but didn't understand. Some species thought it was grief. Others assumed humans were simply being dramatic. Bexmore found it amusing at first. Another sign of humanity's weakness and inexperience in galactic affairs. But as the hours passed and Earth's silence continued, something changed. The Council's intelligence networks couldn't find the human ships. Their communications experts couldn't break through Earth's encryption. Their analysts couldn't predict what humanity would do next. For the first time in 23 years, the galaxy was paying attention to Earth, not because humans were talking, but because they had stopped. Minji stood on the bridge of the Silent Observer. Now joined by 40 other stealth vessels holding position in deep space, they were waiting for orders, watching the Drethok fleet movements, preparing for something the galaxy couldn't imagine. Captain, her communications officer, said quietly. We just received the deployment codes. Minji looked at the message. Phoenix was fully active now. 23 years of preparation, of silence, of being underestimated. It was all leading to this moment. Acknowledge receipt, she said, and prepare for combat operations. This is not a drill. In 72 hours, Ji-hoon would return to the council chamber. In 72 hours, humanity would stop being silent. In 72 hours, the galaxy would learn. What happens when you ignore the quiet species in the corner? The countdown had begun. Fleet Admiral Haeon. Choi stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface of Titan. Watching status displays that showed the positions of 12,000 warships, the ships were spread across the outer solar system, hidden in the rings of Saturn, nestled among the asteroids, stationed in the cold dark beyond Neptune. 23 years of construction. All done in absolute secrecy, while the galaxy watched Earth and saw nothing but a peaceful, passive species. Admiral. The last of the reserve fleets have reached their staging points, reported Commander Borasong. She was young for her rank. Only 32, but she had spent her entire adult life training for this moment. They all had. Heon nodded. Status of the Quantum Gate Network? Dr. Kong reports all gates are online and synchronized. We can deploy the entire fleet to any target within the network's range in under 3 minutes. The Council species needed days or weeks to move their fleets across the distances humanity could now cross in minutes. That was the advantage of having actually studied physics. Instead of just using alien technology they didn't understand. Haeon thought back to those early days after first contact. The Council had welcomed humanity with barely concealed condescension. offering technology and trade like gifts to a primitive species. They had assumed humans would be grateful, dependent, eager to join the galactic community on whatever terms were offered, but Earth had seen something the Council hadn't. Every piece of alien technology, every trade agreement, every casual conversation was a learning opportunity. Human scientists taken apart every device the aliens shared, studying the principles behind them, understanding not just how they worked, but why they worked. Then they had improved them. The Valtheri built ships with gravity drives that could reach 0.8 light speed. Human engineers had pushed that to 0.95. The Harathi had sensor networks that could detect ships at 20 light seconds. Human networks could reach 40. The Planarians had weapons that could punch through standard armor. Human weapons could punch through everything. 23 years of appearing weak while growing strong. 23 years of Ambassador Kim sitting quietly in that council chamber, letting them underestimate Earth, while humanity built the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Yoonji Kong sat in her laboratory on Luna, watching the power readings from the quantum gate she had spent 15 years designing. The gates were based on Harathi jump technology. But where the aliens had been content with simple point-to-point travel, Yoonji had created a network. 47 gates positioned throughout human-controlled space, each one capable of allowing instant travel to any other gate in the network. Dr. Kong, "We're showing some fluctuation in Gate 17, her assistant reported. Yoonji made an adjustment, her fingers flying across the holographic controls. "It's within acceptable parameters. The gate is compensating for the mass of the Dreadnought Squadron passing through." She watched as 6 massive warships, each over a kilometer long, emerged from the gate near Mars. They had been constructed in the Kuiper Belt shipyards, built from ice and rock and metal in a construction facility that had been operational for 18 years without the Council knowing it existed. The galaxy thought humanity had maybe 300 ships, the vessels they used for cargo transport and system patrol. What they didn't know about were the 12,000 warships waiting in the darkness, crewed by 200,000 trained personnel who had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. Sergeant Dong-Yin Lee checked his equipment one more time. The combat suit was a work of art, combining Valthari, personal shielding with human-designed weapon systems and armor, plating made from materials the Council hadn't discovered yet. His squad of 20 soldiers stood ready in the deployment bay, each one a veteran of thousands of hours of training exercises. "Listen up," Dong-Yun said, his voice calm despite what they were about to do. "Our mission is reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. We're going into Drethok territory. We're mapping their defenses, and we're getting out clean. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We do this right, and the fleet will have the information they need." His soldiers nodded. They had trained for missions like this, insertion behind enemy lines using stealth technology that made them invisible to biological sensors. The Drethok relied on organic detection systems, which made them vulnerable to a species that understood electronic warfare. The transport ship's AI announced their approach to the deployment zone. In 10 minutes, Dong-Yun and his team would drop into a Dreth-controlled system and begin gathering the intelligence that would help humanity plan their attack, he thought. About the 847 colonists who had died at Kepler 442, he thought about the Council's sympathy that meant nothing, their words that changed nothing. This mission was for them. Counselor Thexmore sat in his private chambers, trying once again to contact Earth. For 3 days, every attempt at communication had been met with automated responses. "The Embassy of Earth is temporarily closed. Please direct all inquiries to the Central Council database." It was unnerving. In 23 years, humanity had never gone silent like this. They had always maintained basic diplomatic communication, even when they weren't participating in debates. His aide entered the room. "Sir, our intelligence services report that they cannot locate any human vessels in Council space. The cargo ships, the passenger transports, even the small courier vessels. They've all disappeared." "That's impossible," Thexmore said. "You don't hide an entire species civilian fleet." "Sir, they're gone. and our sensor networks show no activity from Earth itself. No commercial broadcasts, no navigational beacons, no standard traffic control signals. It's as if they've completely withdrawn from the galaxy. Dexmore felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Uncertainty. Humans were supposed to be predictable, passive, unthreatening. This behavior didn't match their pattern. What are our analysts saying? They're divided, sir. Some think it's a protest over our response to the Kepler 442 incident. Others believe it might be some kind of internal crisis on Earth. But a few, the aide hesitated. A few what? A few think humanity might be preparing for something, though they can't imagine what. Dexmore dismissed the idea. Humanity had been part of the Council for over 2 decades. He had watched them carefully. They had no significant military, no aggressive tendencies, no reason to be preparing for anything. But still, the silence bothered him. On Titan. Admiral Hayan watched the tactical displays update with information from Sergeant Lee's reconnaissance mission. The data was perfect. Detailed maps of Drethawk fleet positions, defense stations, and hive-world locations. The Drethawk had no idea humans were watching them, cataloging their every position, preparing to strike. Sir, Ambassador Kim has sent confirmation, Commander Song reported. He will return to the Council chamber in 6 hours with our formal response to the Kepler 442 incident. 6 hours. In 6 hours, the galaxy would learn what humanity had been doing while they sat silent in that Council chamber. In 6 hours, passive Earth would become something else entirely. Order all fleet commanders to bring their ships to combat readiness, Hayan said. Begin final system checks on all weapons. Prepare the first wave strike packages. Yes, sir. Should we inform the other human colonies? They already know. Every human in the galaxy knows what's coming. We've been preparing them for this moment since the day we made first contact with the Council. On the bridge of the Silent Observer, Captain Minji Park received her final orders. Her stealth ship and 40 others like it would serve as the tip of the spear. The first vessels to engage the Drethawk when the order came. They would hit the command ships, disrupting the swarm's coordination, creating chaos that the main fleet would exploit. She looked at her crew. Men and women who had trained in secrecy, who had spent years watching the galaxy while staying invisible. They were ready. All hands, this is the captain, Minji announced. In 6 hours, Ambassador Kim will declare war on the Drethawk swarm. When he does, we will already be engaging the enemy. Our mission is to show the Council what humanity really is. What we've always been beneath the silence. We are not weak. We are not passive. We are simply patient. And our patience has ended. Across the solar system, from the hidden shipyards to the training facilities, from the weapons laboratories to the command centers, humanity prepared for war. 23 years of silence was about to end, and the galaxy would never see Earth the same way again. The countdown continued. 6 hours until Ambassador Kim returned to the Council. 6 hours until humanity stopped hiding. 6 hours until the galaxy learned that sometimes the quietest species is the most dangerous one. The Council chamber filled slowly, representatives arriving with curiosity mixed with annoyance. 3 days of silence from Earth had been strange, but most species saw it as human drama over a single lost station. The galaxy had bigger problems to worry about than humanity's feelings. Counselor Dexmore took his seat, watching the human section carefully. Ambassador Kim had requested mandatory attendance for this session, which was unusual but not unprecedented. Dexmore expected an emotional speech about the Kepler 442 tragedy, perhaps a demand for action that the Council would politely decline. When Ji-hoon Kim entered the chamber, something was different. He walked with the same measured pace, wore the same simple diplomatic uniform, but his expression had changed. The passive observer was gone. In his place stood something harder, colder, more dangerous. Ji-hoon reached the central podium and placed his datapad on the display surface. Holographic screens materialized around the chamber, showing star maps of the outer rim sectors. Members of the Galactic Council, Ji-hoon began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix. For 23 years, Earth has observed how this council operates. We have watched how you debate, how you negotiate, how you avoid difficult decisions. Today, I will show you what you have refused to see. The star maps zoomed in on Drethok territory. Red indicators marked consumed worlds, destroyed stations, absorbed colonies. But there were far more red marks than the Council had publicly acknowledged. The Drethak swarm has consumed 47 colony worlds in the past 5 years. Ji-hoon continued. Not the 12 the Council officially recognizes. 47, they have absorbed over 3 million sentient beings from a dozen different species, and they are not slowing down. They are accelerating. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Planarian Ambassador Ross to object. These numbers are not verified. Earth cannot simply present unsubstantiated claims. Ji-hoon touched his datapad. New images appeared. Surveillance footage from human stealth vessels showing Drethok bioships consuming worlds. The detail was impossible to deny. The technology clearly beyond what the Council thought humanity possessed. We have been watching them, Ji-hoon said simply. While you debated and formed committees, we watched. We studied. We learned. Dexmore leaned forward in his seat. The images were troubling, but something else bothered him more. How had humanity gathered this intelligence? How long had they been operating surveillance vessels in Council space without anyone knowing? Even if your data is accurate, the Harathic delegate said, the Drethak are a known threat. We manage them through containment strategies and periodic military operations. This does not constitute an emergency. Ji-hoon's expression didn't change. You asked what Earth thinks about this crisis. 3 days ago, I told you we were observing. Our observation is complete. We have concluded that the Drethak swarm represents an existential threat to all species in this sector. And we have concluded that this council lacks the will to address that threat. The chamber erupted in objections. Multiple species stood, shouting about human arrogance and overstepping boundaries. Ji-hoon waited calmly for the noise to die down. When we requested aid for Kepler 442, Ji-hoon said, his voice cutting through the chaos. What did you do? The chamber fell silent. You offered sympathy, Ji-hoon continued. You expressed concern. You suggested we move our colonies to safer locations? 847 human beings died, and you gave us words. Just words, he paused, letting that sink in. Earth appreciates your sympathy, but we have learned that words without action are meaningless. So we will offer you something different. We offer action. Kuhn touched his datapad again. The holographic displays changed, showing a new image. The seal of Earth's unified government, accompanied by a formal document that appeared in every species' native language, effective immediately. Earth declares a state of war with the Drethak swarm. All Drethak assets, vessels, and occupied territories are considered hostile. All Drethok entities will be destroyed or expelled from this sector. This war will continue until the Drethak threat is completely eliminated. For a moment, absolute silence filled the chamber. Then chaos returned, louder than before. You cannot declare war, the Planarian Ambassador shouted. Earth has no military force capable of such action. This is suicide. It violates 17 different council protocols, added another delegate. Humanity will be destroyed within weeks, Dexmore said, his voice carrying genuine concern despite his earlier contempt. Ambassador Kim, I understand your anger, but this is not rational. Earth must reconsider. Ji-hoon smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Fleet Admiral Choi, he said calmly. Status report. The air above the podium shimmered, and a holographic figure appeared. Admiral Hoon Choi stood in full military dress uniform, his bearing sharp and professional. Behind him, the command center on Titan was visible, showing dozens of officers working at tactical stations. Ambassador Han said with a slight nod. As of 23 minutes ago, the Human Defense Fleet initiated Operation Cleansing Fire. First wave strike forces have engaged. Drethak assets at 17 target locations across the Outer Rim. Second wave forces are moving to intercept. Drethak fleet concentrations in sectors 914. In 22. The council chamber froze. Every representative stared at the admiral, trying to process what they were hearing. Display tactical overview, Ji-hoon ordered. New holographic screens materialized, showing real-time footage from combat zones. Human warships, sleek and deadly, tore through Drethok biovessels with devastating efficiency. Weapons that the Council had never seen before burned through organic armor. Shields held against Drethok biological attacks. Fighter craft moved with impossible precision, targeting weak points in the enemy's ships. One image showed a human dreadnought, massive and bristling with weapons, destroying a Drethok queen ship in under 30 seconds. Another showed a squadron of destroyers wiping out an entire Droth patrol fleet without taking a single hit. The Council watched in stunned silence as humanity, the species they had mocked as passive and weak, demonstrated military power that rivaled anything the Council could deploy. Ships appeared and disappeared using technology the Council didn't understand. Weapons fired with precision the Council's forces couldn't match. Coordination and tactics showed training and experience that shouldn't exist in a species so new to the galaxy. "Howl?" Dexmore whispered, but his voice carried in the shocked quiet. "How is this possible?" Admiral Choi answered. "While Earth participated in Council affairs, we also prepared for the possibility that the Council would fail to protect its members. We built 12,000 warships. We trained 200,000 military personnel. We developed weapon systems specifically designed to counter every known threat in this sector. And we did all of this while you watched and saw nothing." "This is impossible," the Plenarian ambassador insisted. "We would have detected this. Our intelligence networks would have found evidence of such massive construction." "You saw what we wanted you to see," Ji-hoon said. "We have been studying you for 23 years. We know how your intelligence services work, what they look for, what they ignore. We built our fleet in places you never thought to look, using methods you never imagined." Another tactical display updated. A Drethok hive station, massive and heavily defended, came under attack from human forces. The station was destroyed in minutes. "Current casualty report," Admiral Choi said, reading from a display only he could see. "Drethok forces, 18,000 combatants destroyed. Human forces, 47 personnel wounded, 3 ships with minor damage. No human fatalities." The numbers were devastating. Not the Drethok casualties, though those were impressive. What shocked the Council was how one-sided the combat was. Humanity was fighting a war and barely taking losses. "This is madness," the Herothi delegate said. "Even if you win individual battles, you cannot sustain this. The Drethok will adapt. They will overwhelm you with numbers." "We have calculated the force ratios," Heen responded. "At current engagement efficiency, the Drethok swarm will be completely eliminated in 60 days. Probably sooner." 60 days. The Council had been dealing with the Drethok threat for 3 centuries, obtaining them, managing them, losing colonies to them. And humanity was claiming they would eliminate the entire swarm in 2 months. Ji-hoon stepped forward, his presence commanding attention despite his size compared to many Council species. "For 23 years, you asked when Earth would participate in galactic affairs, when we would contribute to Council decisions, when we would stop being passive observers." He paused. "This is us participating. This is Earth's contribution to galactic security. We are eliminating a threat you were too afraid or too comfortable to address." "You should have consulted the Council," Dexmore said, but his voice lacked conviction. "This affects all species." "Requested aid," Ji-hoon replied coldly. "You gave us sympathy. That was your consultation?" Another tactical update showed human forces destroying a Drethok supply convoy. The ships were methodical, efficient, merciless. "The war has begun," Ji-hoon said. "Earth has spoken, and we will finish what you were too afraid to start." Session adjourned. He walked out of the chamber, leaving the Council in chaos. Watching the holographic displays that showed humanity rewriting the galaxy's understanding of warfare, power, and what happens when the quiet species finally decides to be heard, Captain? Minji Park's stealth vessel dropped out of quantum space 30,000 kilometers from the Drethok Queenship. The massive biovessel pulsed with organic energy, surrounded by smaller escort ships that moved like predators protecting their alpha. This was the 17th Queenship humanity had targeted, and each one commanded thousands of Drethok vessels. Weapons locked, her tactical officer reported. Resonance torpedoes armed and ready. Fire, Minji ordered. 6 torpedoes launched silently in the vacuum, their drives leaving no visible trail. The Drethek escorts never saw them coming. The torpedo struck the Queenship's central mass, and the effect was immediate. The resonance weapons disrupted the biological communication network that connected all Drethek vessels. Sending cascading failures through their command structure, the Queenship convulsed, its escorts breaking formation in confusion. Before they could recover, 3 more human destroyers dropped out of quantum space and opened fire. The engagement lasted for minutes. When it ended, the Queenship and all its escorts were debris. "Confirm kill and move to next target," Minji said. 17 down, 11 to go. Her crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had destroyed more enemy ships in 3 weeks than most Council species destroyed in decades. And they were just one ship among thousands. Sergeant Dong-Yoon Lee crouched behind a ridge of organic material that had once been a building. The hive world sprawled before him, a nightmare landscape of consumed matter reformed into Drethak architecture. His combat suit's sensors showed thermal signatures everywhere. Thousands of Drethek drones working to process absorbed material. Team 2. Advance to Marker 7, he ordered through the encrypted comm channel. Team 3. Provide overwatch. His soldiers moved like ghosts through the alien landscape, their suits masking them from the biological sensors the Drethek relied on. This was the 5th hive world they had infiltrated in 10 days, gathering intelligence and eliminating key targets. But what haunted Dong-Yoon wasn't the combat. It was what they found in the processing chambers. Genetic material from dozens of species, absorbed and broken down for Drethek use. The remains of entire civilizations, reduced to biological components. One chamber had contained traces of the Kepler 442 colonists. His team had found genetic markers matching humans, mixed with the remains of a planarian research station and a Herathi colony. All absorbed, all processed, all gone. Charges placed, his demo specialist reported. Ready for detonation on your mark? All teams pull back to extraction point, Dong-Yoon ordered. We're done here. They withdrew silently, reaching the designated coordinates where a transport waited. Only when they were clear did Dong-Yoon trigger the charges. The explosion tore through the processing facility, destroying years of Drethok biomaterial accumulation as they lifted off. He watched the hive world through the transport's viewport. In 2 days, the main fleet would arrive and sterilize this entire world. Nothing would remain. No Drethek, no hive structures, no evidence they had ever been here. It was necessary, but it still weighed on him. Dr. Yunji Kong worked through the night in her laboratory, analyzing data from the frontline engagements. The resonance weapon was performing beyond expectations, but she was already designing the next generation. The Drethwork were adapting, their biological systems beginning to compensate for the disruption effect. Dr. Kong. Admiral Choi is requesting a status update on the Cascade project, her assistant said. EUNG pulled up the relevant files. The Cascade weapon was her most ambitious creation, a device that could disrupt Drethak biocommunication across an entire star system simultaneously. It would make destroying hive worlds significantly easier and reduce human casualties even further. Tell the Admiral we'll be ready for field testing in 72 hours, she said. But remind him this is still experimental. The power requirements are immense. Her assistant nodded and left. Yanji returned to her work, adjusting equations and running simulations. Every weapon she created saved human lives. That was what mattered. That was what kept her working when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. But sometimes, late at night, she wondered about the moral weight of creating weapons so efficient at killing. The Drethok were monsters, yes, but humanity was matching their ruthlessness with its own cold efficiency. What did that say about them? She pushed the thought aside. There would be time for philosophy after the war was won. Commander Bora Song stood on the bridge of the dreadnought, indomitable, watching as her fleet prepared to engage a Drethic stronghold. 27 warships under her command, preparing to assault a system that the Drethhawk had held for 40 years. All ships report ready, her tactical coordinator announced. Quantum gates are synchronized. We can begin the assault on your order, Commander. Bora studied the tactical display. Intelligence from Sergeant Lee's ground teams showed the system contained 3 hive worlds, a major fleet concentration, and processing facilities that had consumed an estimated 2 million sentient beings over 4 decades. Begin the assault, she ordered. Her fleet moved as one, dropping out of quantum space in perfect formation. The Drethak responded immediately, launching thousands of bioships to defend their territory. But human tactics had evolved beyond anything the swarm could anticipate. The engagement was brutal and efficient. Human ships moved in coordinated patterns, supporting each other, covering weaknesses, maximizing firepower. Drethic vessels fought with savage determination. But they were outmatched in every category that mattered. When a Drethic cruiser managed to breach the Indomitable's shields and tear into her hull, killing 17 crew members, Bora felt something cold settle in her chest. These were her people, her responsibility. Their deaths were her burden to carry. Damage control teams to Section 12, she ordered, her voice steady despite the pain. All ships, focus fire on that cruiser. Destroy it. The cruiser died under concentrated fire from 6 human destroyers, but the damage was done. 17 more names to add to the casualty list. 17 more families to notify. The battle continued for 3 hours. When it ended, the Drethok stronghold was destroyed. 3 hive worlds were sterilized. Thousands of enemy ships were debris. Humanity had won another overwhelming victory. But Bora couldn't celebrate. She could only think about the 17 crew members who wouldn't be going home. The Galactic Council convened another emergency session. It had been 30 days since Earth declared war, and the results were undeniable. Drethok territory had shrunk by 40%. Dozens of hive worlds had been destroyed. The swarm was in retreat across multiple sectors. Councillor Thexmore stood to address the chamber. The Council must take action regarding Earth's military campaign. While we acknowledge the effectiveness of their operations, they are acting without authorization or oversight. This sets a dangerous precedent, a Hearthy delegate agreed. We should demand a ceasefire and negotiate with the Drethik. War should be a last resort, not a first response. Ambassador Kim, watching from Earth's seat, stood slowly. His expression hadn't softened since the declaration. If anything, he had grown colder as the war progressed. Negotiate with the Drethak, he said, his voice carrying clear contempt. Tell me, how do you negotiate with a species that absorbs and consumes all other life? What compromise can you offer creatures who see every other sentient being as resources to be harvested? There must be some diplomatic solution, the Plenarian ambassador insisted. Ji-hoon activated his datapad. Images appeared in the chamber. Footage from Sergeant Lee's ground operations. Processing chambers full of genetic material. Absorbed colonies. The remains of millions of sentient beings reduced to biological components. This is what you want to negotiate with, Ji-hoon said. These are the Kepler 442 colonists. These are Plenarian researchers. These are Hearthy miners. All absorbed. All processed. All dead. But please continue to tell me about diplomatic solutions. The chamber fell silent. You had your chance to negotiate, Ji-hoon continued. You had centuries to address this threat. You chose committees and protocols and debates. Earth has chosen action, but at what cost? Exmoor asked quietly. How many have you lost? 3,214 casualties, Ji-hoon replied. 418 dead. Every single one of them is a tragedy. Every single one is a name we will remember. But we are ending a threat that has consumed millions. The mathematics are clear. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who had mocked humanity for 23 years. The war will continue, he said. With or without council approval, Earth has spoken, and we do not require your permission to defend ourselves and eliminate threats to galactic security. 30 light-years away, a massive Drethik fleet assembled for a desperate counterstrike. They had identified Earth's location and decided that eliminating humanity's home world was their only chance for survival. 10,000 bioships, the largest Drethok fleet ever assembled, prepared to jump to Sol System. Their plan was simple: overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer numbers, consume the human homeworld, and break the species' will to fight. They entered quantum space. Traveling faster than light toward Earth, the Council's intelligence networks detected the movement and tried to warn humanity. But Earth's communication channels remained closed. The Drethok fleet emerged from quantum space at the edge of Sol System, ready to begin their attack. What they found was waiting for them changed everything. Earth's orbital defenses activated immediately. Platforms that had been disguised as satellites revealed themselves as weapons batteries. Ships emerged from hiding spots throughout the system. Defensive grids powered up around Earth, Mars, and the major stations. And deeper in the system, Earth itself was revealed not as a vulnerable homeworld, but as a fortress bristling with weapons that made the orbital defenses look primitive in comparison. The Battle of Sol lasted 6 hours. Not a single Drethik vessel survived to retreat. Humanity had turned its own star system into the most heavily defended location in the galaxy, and the Drethek had learned this lesson too late. Aboard the Silent Observer, Captain Minji watched the tactical feed from Sol System. She felt no triumph, only tired relief. The war was entering its final phase. 60 days, Admiral Choi had promised. They were on scheduled day 58. The last Drethok hive world burned under concentrated fire from the human defense fleet. Admiral Han Choi watched from his command center on Titan as the final stronghold of the swarm collapsed into flame and ash. Around him, his officers worked quietly, professional, even in this moment of victory. "Sir, all enemy signatures have ceased," Commander Song reported. "The Drethok swarm is extinct." Extinct. The word carried weight that Hyun felt in his chest. Humanity had not just defeated an enemy, they had erased an entire species from existence. It had been necessary, inevitable, the only way to truly end the threat. But that didn't make it feel less heavy. "Send the confirmation to Earth Command and Ambassador Kim," Hyun said. "Inform all fleet elements to begin recovery operations and casualty assessment." The final numbers came in over the next hours. 30,000 human casualties, both military and civilian, if you counted the Kepler 442 colonists who had started this war. 418 dead in combat. 800 ships damaged, though only 73 were total losses. Against that, the complete elimination of the Drethok swarm, hundreds of hive worlds destroyed, millions of Drethok vessels eliminated. A threat that had plagued the galaxy for centuries ended in less than 2 months. The mathematics said humanity had won decisively. But Hyun thought about the 489 names on the casualty list and wondered what victory really meant. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Every species sent their highest representatives, and the chamber was fuller than it had been in decades. They were here to witness history, to see what happened when the galaxy's newest species proved to be its most dangerous. Ambassador Ji-hoon Kim entered the chamber. But he was not alone. Behind him walked Prime Minister Tae Shin, Earth's political leader, who had never before attended a council session. Tae-young was younger than most expected, only 47, but he carried himself with quiet confidence. The council chamber fell silent as Tae-young approached the central podium. He carried no data pad, no notes, no diplomatic aids. He simply stood and looked at the assembled representatives of 47 species. "The Drethok swarm is extinct," Tae-young said simply. "Earth has fulfilled its declaration. The war is over." The chamber erupted. Multiple species tried to speak at once, their voices overlapping in the translation matrix. Tae-young waited patiently for order to return. The plenarian ambassador spoke first. "Prime Minister, while we acknowledge your victory, We must address the implications. Earth has demonstrated military power that far exceeds anything the Council anticipated. Many species are concerned about what this means for galactic stability. Some species are demanding that Earth disarm, added the Harathi delegate. You have proven your point. Now you must show you are not a threat to peaceful civilizations. Tae Young's expression didn't change. No. The single word hung in the air. No. Dexmore repeated. Prime Minister, you must understand the Council's position. Your military capability is destabilizing. If every species maintained such forces, the galaxy would descend into chaos. Let me be very clear, Taeyong said, his voice calm but firm. Earth will not disarm. We will not reduce our military capacity. We will not give the Council oversight of our defense forces. These things are not negotiable. Then you leave us no choice but to consider sanctions, the Plenarian ambassador said. The Council cannot allow one species to maintain such disproportionate military power. You can impose whatever sanctions you wish, Taeyong replied. Earth has been functionally independent of Council trade for years. We prepared for this possibility when we prepared for war. Your sanctions will hurt you more than they hurt us. Ji-hoon stepped forward to stand beside his prime minister. The Council had 23 years to notice what we were doing. You had intelligence services, trade monitors, diplomatic observers. We hid nothing that you couldn't have found if you had looked. But you didn't look because you assumed we were weak. That assumption was your mistake, not our deception. What do you want? Vexmore asked. If not disarmament, if not Council oversight, what is Earth's position? Taeyong activated a holographic display. A document appeared, translated into every Council language. This is the Mutual Defense Compact, he said. A new framework for galactic security. Every species contributes forces proportional to their population and resources. All members commit to defending each other against existential threats. No more committees that take years to reach decisions. No more debates while colonies burn. Real cooperation, real defense, real action. You want to militarize the entire Council, the Harathi delegate said. I want to prevent another Drethek, Taeyong corrected. I want to ensure that when the next threat appears, the galaxy can respond before millions die. The swarm consumed 3 million sentient beings before Earth acted. How many more would have died if we had waited for the Council to find its courage? The chamber fell silent. It was a question no one wanted to answer. And if the Council refuses? The Plenarian ambassador asked. Then Earth will continue to maintain our own defense forces, Taeyong said. And when the next crisis comes, we will decide whether to act based on our own interests and values. But understand this, we will not become your military. We will not fight your battles while you debate. We will not be the weapon you deploy when convenient and fear when idle. Councillor Vexmore stood slowly. For a long moment, he studied the human prime minister, seeing something in him that he hadn't seen before. Or perhaps, seeing clearly what had always been there beneath the diplomatic courtesy. The Velthari Empire will sign the compact, Vexmore said. Earth has proven they understand what power means and what it costs. That is more than most species in this chamber can claim. The announcement shocked the Council. The Velthari were the oldest and most influential species in the galaxy. Their support for Earth's proposal changed everything. Other species began to reconsider. Some signed the compact that day. Others took weeks to deliberate. A few refused entirely and faced the reality that they were now isolated from the galaxy's emerging security. Structure Captain Minji Park stood in the memorial garden on Luna, looking at the wall of names. 489 casualties. Each name was carved into black stone, each one representing a life given in service to humanity's survival. She found the name she was looking for. Lieutenant Han, from her ship, killed when a Drethok weapon breached their shields. Ensign Yuna lost when her fighter was overwhelmed by enemy drones, and 37 others from the Silent Observer's crew who hadn't made it home. I'm sorry, she whispered to the names. I'm sorry you had to die for us to prove we weren't weak. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Admiral Heian Choi stood a respectful distance away, his own eyes on the memorial wall. Commander Song asked me to give you something, Heian said, offering Minji a small box. Your promotion orders? You're being made Rear Admiral and given command of the stealth fleet. Minji took the box but didn't open it. I don't know if I want to command anything anymore, sir. We won the war, but I keep thinking about how efficient we were at killing. How good we became at destruction. I know, Hien said quietly. I think about it too. We built a military force that could eliminate an entire species in 60 days. That capability doesn't disappear just because the war is over. We have to carry that weight now. How do you live with it? By remembering why we did it, Hien replied. We didn't start this war for conquest or glory. We started it because the galaxy wouldn't protect its own people. We finished it so the Drethic could never consume another colony. That purpose matters. Sergeant Dong-Yun Lee sat in a quiet bar in Nusul, drinking alone. His combat suit was in storage, his weapon turned in, his squad disbanded as the military began its drawdown. He should have felt relief that the war was over. Instead, he felt hollow. He had seen things in those Dreth-Hive worlds that would never leave him. The processing chambers, the genetic material from dozens of species, the evidence of millions of deaths, and he had killed thousands of Drethok drones, eliminated their command structures, helped sterilize entire worlds. It had been necessary. He knew that. But knowing something is necessary doesn't make it stop haunting you. Sergeant Lee? A voice said. Dong-Yun looked up to see a young woman in civilian clothes. It took him a moment to recognize her as Private Salmon, one of the soldiers who had served under him during the war. Mind if I join you? She asked. Sure, he said. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, Salmon spoke. I can't stop thinking about what we did. The hive worlds we destroyed. It was the right thing, wasn't it? Yes, Dong-Yun said. It was right. It was necessary. It was the only way to stop them. But that doesn't make it easy to live with. So what do we do now? We remember, Dong-Yun said. We remember what the cost was. We remember why it mattered. And we make sure that if humanity ever has to fight again, it's because there was no other choice. Not because it was convenient or easy or profitable. Dr. Yoonji Kong received the Council's highest scientific honor at a ceremony she almost didn't attend. She stood on the stage, looking at the representatives from species who had once dismissed human science as primitive and derivative. Dr. Kong, the Council's science director, said, your work on quantum gate technology and resonance weapons has advanced galactic scientific understanding by decades. On behalf of the Council, we honor your achievements. Yoonji accepted the award, but her speech was brief. This honor belongs to all the human scientists, engineers, and researchers who worked in secret for 23 years. And it belongs to the 489 soldiers who died so that our research would matter. Thank you. She left the stage to quiet applause. Later in her laboratory, she looked at the award and wondered what her next project would be. The war was over, but the universe was full of challenges. Maybe she could focus on building things instead of destroying them for a while. Ambassador Ji-Hoon Kim stood in his quarters, packing his belongings. His assignment to the Council was ending. Earth was sending a new ambassador, someone better suited to the galaxy's new reality, where humanity is a superpower rather than a curiosity. He looked at his datapad, at the files he had compiled over 23 years, detailed analysis of 47 species, their strengths, weaknesses, diplomatic patterns, military capabilities. All the information that had helped Earth prepare for a war the galaxy didn't know was coming. Ambassador, a voice said from the doorway. Counselor Thexmore stood there, looking older than Ji-Hoon remembered. Counselor Ji-Hoon acknowledged. I wasn't expecting visitors. Oh. I wanted to ask you something before you leave, Thexmore said. All these years, sitting quietly in council sessions, never speaking unless necessary. Was it difficult? Listening to us mock your species, dismiss your opinions, treat you as irrelevant. Ji-Hoon considered the question. Yes, he said finally. It was difficult, but it was necessary. You needed to underestimate us, and we needed to learn from you. We underestimated you, Thexmore agreed. That was our mistake. But I wonder, Ambassador, if you understand what you've done. You've proven that a species can hide its true nature for decades. You've proven that the quiet ones might be the most dangerous. How do we trust each other now? The same way you always have, Ji-hoon replied. Through actions, not words. Earth has acted. We eliminated a threat you wouldn't face. We proposed a security structure based on mutual defense. We could have conquered the Council with the force we revealed. Instead, we offered partnership. Judge us by what we do, not what you feared we might do. Exmoor nodded slowly. Your new ambassador arrives tomorrow. I will meet with her and discuss the Velthari Empire's role in the defense compact. But I wanted to tell you something first. The galaxy has learned its lesson. When humanity is silent, we will pay attention. And when you speak, we will listen. After Exmoor left, Ji-hoon returned to his packing. Tomorrow, a new chapter would begin for Earth and the Council. But tonight, he could reflect on what had been accomplished. Earth had remained silent for 23 years. In that silence, they had learned, prepared, and transformed from a passive observer to a galactic superpower. And when they finally spoke, their declaration of war had rewritten the rules of galactic politics. The price had been high. Lives lost, innocents sacrificed, moral weight that would never fully lift. But the galaxy was safer now. The Dreth were gone. And Earth had proven that sometimes, looking at the night sky through the window, somewhere up there, human ships patrolled, human stations orbited, human colonies thrived. The galaxy knew them now, respected them, and feared them a little. That fear was important, not because Earth wanted to be feared, but because fear meant the galaxy would think twice before ignoring human interests again. 847 colonists had died at Kepler 442, and the Council had offered sympathy. That would never happen again. The war was over. The silence had ended. And Earth had declared its place among the stars, not through words, but through action that could never be ignored or forgotten.